You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Breaking news out of Texas. The Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles recommended today the execution of Rodney Reed be delayed 120 days. It was a unanimous vote by the 7-member parole board to give a reprieve to Reed, who was scheduled to die by lethal injection on Wednesday for the 1996 killing of 19-year-old Stacey Stites. Now, supporters of Reed say newly uncovered evidence raises serious doubts about his guilt. The board's recommendation goes to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who has remained silent about the case, but also, in addition to that decision, the Texas Court of Appeals also weighed in on this, and that is, so his execution received a stay by order of the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And so it doesn't matter what Greg Abbott does, this execution has now been stayed. I'm going to read from this. I don't have time to even pull up on my iPad, folks. It says, the actual innocence claims satisfy the requirements of the specified article. Accordingly, we remand those claims to the trial court for further development. We further find that the Honorable Doug Shaver continues to sit by assignment as the judge of the 21st Judicial District Court of Bastrop County for applicant's case. If Judge Shaver chooses to discontinue his assignment in the case, then the regional presiding judge, the Honorable Olin Underwood, shall appoint or otherwise determine who is assigned to this case. Applicant's execution is stayed pending further order of this court that was handed down just today. This is significant news. The Innocence Project of Texas has been fighting on behalf of Reed. Reed says that he was engaged in a consensual relationship with Stites. Her former boyfriend was a police officer, and Reed claims that that officer was the one who was last seen spending time with her. This is an amazing case, again, coming out of Texas. He was scheduled to be executed on Wednesday. A lot of folks across the country, many, of course, entertainers and other activists have been calling for a stay of this execution. Joining us right now, Joseph Williams, senior editor, U.S. News and World Report, Long Victoria Burke, NNPA, and also Julian Boykin, founder, chairman, Young Republicans of Southern Maryland. Joseph, when we look at this case here, we just had the case in Georgia where the man was executed on Wednesday. Claims of innocence, they refused to test the DNA. You have this case right here where they also claim that if they test the DNA, I think it's a belt in some piece of evidence in a safety deposit box, they say will show that his DNA was not on there. What is still stunning to me is when you have these DAs who refuse to test evidence. And here's the piece. If you did it and his DNA is on it,
no problem. In
a conversation.
Yeah.
But they would rather sit here and fight these things versus ensure, and if the person was guilty, that you have the right person who's in prison.
Well, it's not surprising at all. I mean, this is part of the police prosecutor access, police prosecutor and judicial access. They don't like to be proven wrong, and they don't like to have people order them to prove that they're right. So it's not unfortunately, it's not an uncommon thing. I mean, this is just one of the cases that we know about where the prosecutor and the DA and the cops may have gotten it wrong. And moreover, if her ex-boyfriend is a police officer and is probably a reasonable risk to be assumed to be a suspect, that's reason number 18 out of probably reason, 200 to 300 reasons why they don't want to go back and reopen this case. It's not surprising. They protect their own. They tend to protect their own. And this is probably a lot more common than we think.
It's amazing here, Lauren. The board was supposed to vote on Monday. The chairman moved this vote up. I'm born and raised in Texas. It ain't normal for this board to vote unanimously on something like this here. That ain't normal in Texas. That says a whole lot about how powerful this new evidence is.
Well, absolutely. Well, the entire thing is a lesson on the importance of, obviously, due process. It is pretty shocking that people are less interested. They're more interested in personal reputation and ego and being seen as right than they are in finding out what the truth is and not executing the wrong person. I mean, why would that be a minor thing? I have no idea. But we've seen this before, you know, time and time again, where people have not wanted to really find out what the truth was. They wanted to sort of just proceed without knowing. And I get it that there's some prosecutor, there's some DA sitting back there that doesn't want to be proven wrong in public on a big case that has gone viral, has gone national. But why would you want to be a part of the case where you might have executed the wrong person? That I don't get.
Here's what's amazing here, Julian. I'm reading from the Texas Tribune right now. Go to my iPad, please. It said that, first of all, Ben Jett, who was the attorney for Rodney Reed with the Innocence Project, Ben Jett said a colleague was walking into the death row prison Friday afternoon to give Reed the news. He's already been moved into the death row prison. Abbott, this is what it says, Julian. Abbott has stopped one execution since taking office in 2015. Also, at the unanimous urging of the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles. He agreed last year to change death row inmate Thomas Whitaker's death sentence to one of life in prison minutes before Whitaker was set to be injected with a lethal dose of pentobarbital in the state's death chamber. But that case was about mercy and granting the wishes of Whitaker's only surviving victim, his father. Reed's case instead questions the guilty verdict and landed him on death row, a verdict the Texas justice system has upheld for decades. Before Whitaker, no Texas governor had stopped an execution for more than a decade. Abbott has allowed 48 executions to proceed.
I think it says a lot about the DA. When you don't want to look at the evidence, there's evidence that shows that this person is innocent, and we need to look at the system as a whole. You know, this is just one case of someone who clearly is innocent. Just imagine how many more there are out there that didn't get this opportunity. Imagine how many more have been executed that really were innocent. You know, I look at it as, okay, we have evidence. The defense is saying, hey, we want to present this evidence. We want you to look at it. And if the DA doesn't look at it, that's just send a red flag to somebody. I don't know if you can go above the DA's head and say, hey, why won't you look at this? Why haven't you looked at it? But something needs to be done about it to where the system can be fair and reasonable across the board for everybody.
Reed was 28 years old when convicted. He's now 51. This took place in 1996. But here's what's interesting. I'm going to go back to the Texas Tribune article. Joseph, this is what they wrote. Both Reed and Fennell, Jimmy Fennell was the fiance of the woman who was killed. Both Reed and Fennell have been accused of multiple sexual assaults. Reed was indicted but never convicted in several other rape cases. That has to, what the hell is that about? Fennell spent 10 years in prison after he kidnapped and allegedly raped a woman while on duty as a police officer in 2007. Stites' body was found partially unclothed in Bastrop County hours after she didn't show up to her grocery store job, according to court records. Fennell's truck was found abandoned in a nearby school parking lot. Pieces of Stites' belt, which is believed to have been used to strangle her, were found at both locations. So the black guy is convicted and is on death row for murdering her, but pieces of her belt are found where her body was found and where the white cop, her fiance, truck was found.
He was a cop. That's why they didn't look at that. You know, it's obvious. It's obvious. They had a fall guy. The fall guy is black. You're in Texas. This kind of thing makes perfect sense to them. Don't want to look at him because the evidence might point a little too strongly, and you might have to answer some uncomfortable questions about your own hiring practices and about who gets to wear a star and a badge. But you have this guy who can get probably a jury to convict him in 15 minutes because of what they just wrote about in the article, and it's a no call. I mean, it's a no call for a DA who wants to get a conviction on a big case.
Lauren, Reed was convicted because sperm cells were found inside her body. Mm-hmm. He says they had a relationship.
Right.
What's amazing here is that, again, go back to the Texas Tribune. Reed had appeals pending at multiple levels from the trial court to the U.S. Supreme Court. In his appeals, he had repeatedly asked for and had been denied DNA testing on the belt thought to have been used to strangle Stites. You got to ask the question, how in the hell you didn't test the DNA?
Yeah. Well,
okay, but hold up. He also argued for a closer look at his case based on forensic evidence that has been re-examined, with the medical examiner now saying Reed's sperm could have been in Stites' body from consensual sex.
Right.
Duh.
Not murder, though.
And new witnesses, including a man who claims Fennell confessed to Stites' murder to him while in prison.
Right. Well,
Wow.
the Innocence Project exists for a reason. And really, when you think about the Innocence Project, should not exist, but they do because they exonerate so many people each year. But obviously, in this case, where you have evidence sitting out there that has not been checked, that has not been referred to, that for some reason people are aggressively not trying to check, that, you know, that's a sign that they know that there's probably something wrong with the case. Obviously, the amount of media attention that's on it now, I would think it's probably not going to happen. You know, he probably is not going to be executed because there's just too much attention on this one case. But it really does make you wonder how many more cases are out there, like you were saying.
Well, what you have is, first of all, with a 120-day stay. And so now the question is, now what happens in the next 4 months? Do they test the DNA? Do they test the belt? Do they now factor in this confession? Reed says he had consensual sex with her. Some of her co-workers and her cousin said they were involved in a relationship. Other family members said, no, they were not. And the DA said, I'll believe the other family members.
but he didn't disagree about consensual sex.
But that's
No. Reed says.
No, I'm talking about the DA. So he agreed.
No.
he didn't agree.
No, the DA agreed with the family members who claimed they had no relationship. So you had a cousin and co-workers of hers who said, yes, her and Reed, the brother, had consensual casual sex. Other family members of hers said, oh, no, they didn't. DA believes them.
But that does not mean rape or anything.
Oh, no, I understand that.
Right.
But the DA's argument is, I will believe the family members who say they had no relationship.
Right.
So therefore, the only way his sperm cells were found in her body
Was by rape.
is he had to rape her.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like
That's what the DA is saying.
We
Right.
can't have no fine, upstanding. And we all know what.
Can't have no black man
Can't have that.
having casual consensual sex with a white woman.
And she ends up
It
dead.
had to have
Somebody's
been
gotta
raped.
pay. Somebody's got to pay, and it's going to be the black guy.
So since you have a 120-day extension, can he be released, or does he have to stay?
No. So now what happens is, first of all, it now goes back to the lower court. So now will the judge order the DNA testing? Because the bottom line is, if the belt was used to strangle her, the DNA is on the belt unless somebody used gloves. So you test the belt. For some reason, the belt has never been tested. So what the DA did was they prosecuted him solely based on his sperm being found in the body.
So that means you should have some pictures of the body with belt markings.
No, you got that.
No, they've got that.
No, you test the damn belt.
True.
You test the belt, and the guy who was in prison with Fennell, you got to bring him in
And get his testimony.
to validate what because he says Fennell confessed to him. Yeah, I killed her in prison. And a lot of coarse language because she was sleeping with a nigga. That's what this guy said about the former cop.
That's what this whole case is about. I mean, that's what this whole case is about.
Yeah.
You know, and she ended up dead. Somebody's got to pay.
This reminds me, folks, of a case called Clarence Brantley. This was out of Harris County. And this was a case that got lots of attention in the 80s. And Clarence Brantley was steps from death on 2 or 3 occasions. He was wrongfully convicted. He died last year at the age of 66. And what happened there was, and the same thing happened, he was actually a janitor at a high school in Conroe, Texas. A white cheerleader was killed. They said Clarence Brantley was the one who did it. It was prosecutorial misconduct. This thing, again, went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And he was saved on 2 or 3 different occasions. You see this story here in the Texas Monthly. He never got an apology. What happened to him? When I say he was close to death, I'm talking about he was minutes away from being executed. And then later, some other individuals were actually were found guilty of this crime as well. And same thing, black man in Texas. This case took place in 1990. And the murder was in 1980, a 16-year-old girl who was raped and strangled at the school during a volleyball game. There was no physical evidence linking Brantley to the case. He was put on trial largely by the testimony of 4 white janitors who all, read this story, y'all, who all reconstructed a version of events that positioned Brantley with the murdered girl at the time of her death. While the other janitors gave alibis for each other, Brantley did not have one. Convicted by an all-white jury, but they couldn't reach a verdict, and the judge declared a mistrial, tried again in front of an all-white jury, this time convicted, came very close to death. The thing here is when Craig Watkins, he was a former district attorney in Dallas, he created this special unit to test DNA evidence. A number of people have since been released from prison who were wrongfully convicted. We had the woman on from St. Louis, did the exact same thing. We've seen other DAs do this. And this is the fundamental problem with the death penalty. There are those like me who have been supporters of the death penalty. But the issue here is, and why it really should be abolished, is that you just have too many damn people who have been released from prison in Texas, in Louisiana, in Illinois, in North Carolina, I can go on and on and on, who were moments away from death, who were innocent.
Also, it's the racial disparity.
It's shameful.
Yeah.
Well, also you got to look at the people that it happens to. How are they financially? Do they have
right.
money for it?
They are overwhelmingly.
That plays a big role.
They're overwhelmingly poor. They can't afford an attorney.
Right.
They're disposable people in the larger sense, in that if they died, nobody would raise a fuss, as opposed to somebody who was middle class. They tend to get convicted on shoddy evidence, and we are at the precipice, or we're at the precipice of getting rid of the death penalty, not just because of these problems, but also because it is cruel and unusual and has been determined so by the Supreme Court. And there were very many times where people were trying to import drugs from overseas to create these cruel executions. Because so not only do you have people who are steps away from death, you have one case in Ohio where the guy was in the death chamber for 45 minutes while they're trying to find a vein. And he's screaming and moaning in pain. And they finally had to wheel him out and then try again a week later, same result.
And our system loves prosecutors. And because we love prosecutors and prosecutors love to brag about how many people they've put in jail, the system has this sort of embedded problem of wanting to put more people in jail, and that shows that I'm doing something. And so defense attorneys don't get the glory that they should get because, in fact, our system, particularly for poor people, it's crucial that defense attorneys are involved in this. But, the thing is, people love to run for office. Ooh, I was a prosecutor, bragging about how many people they got in jail, and that's a big factor in this.
But see, here's the other thing, right? I covered courts in the Miami, Florida area, Broward County, and one of my sources was a prosecutor who was in the homicide division, Chuck Murphy, his brother, and he had probably what I think is one of the most precise views on the death penalty. He was a prosecutor. He'd seen some horrific crimes. He was strongly in favor of the death penalty, but he said the problem was the application of it. A lot of times you get white people who killed black people who don't even come close to the death penalty.
Florida had never had that stat that nobody white had ever been given death penalty in history.
And to me, it said something that you have a black law and order prosecutor who is saying, this is a problem. This is a punishment that I think is fit and just in some cases, but it is not applied evenly. And until we get to that day, all those cases are going to be watched very carefully when they come up.
And then you had Aramis Ayala, the first black state's attorney in Florida, who said, I am not going to prosecute death penalty cases. And then Governor Scott took those cases away from her.
Yes, we are.
Because he was like, how dare you?
Right. How dare you? And that alone was kind of almost baldly racial. That you have somebody, and I guess the ultimate point I was trying to make is prosecutorial discretion plays an important role here. And we don't have a lot of minorities in position to make those calls.
Right.
Well, in a society that has a history of extrajudicial justice, trained specifically at black males, and then we look at the stats with regard to all other crimes, with regard to the disparate judgments and the extensions of sentencing on black male individuals for the same crimes, I mean, of course that would extend to the death penalty. So it shouldn't surprise anybody if that's happening.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, y'all. Hey, guys, as the marijuana momentum continues, friends at marijuanastock.org have already reached more than half of their funding goal for the hemp CBD investment. That's right. If you want to take advantage of this great opportunity, you need to do it now because it won't last much longer. Now, if you don't know, I'm talking about the hemp plant, the good cousin of marijuana, with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Also, if you don't know, hemp farming is now legal in the United States, creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. It's an incredible investment opportunity, and that's where our friends at 420 Real Estate come in. Their business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. They are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. Now, as hemp continues to change the economic landscape, 420 Real Estate is allowing you to chase the American dream, and you can do it now by investing in their crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200. That's right, $200 up to $10,000. Now, do it now before the fund is closed. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get in the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.